Hi there, English language learners. The correct use of commas really is a game changer in your writing. It makes it so much easier for the reader to follow your text. In this video, we'll take a look at 8 basic rules that will definitely help you with your writing. Rule number 1, FANBOYS. FANBOYS stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. These are coordinating conjunctions. Put a comma before coordinating conjunctions only if they connect two independent clauses. An independent clause is a clause that is capable of standing alone as a sentence. Let's see some examples. I went back home, comma, and she carried on studying. Here, both clauses could stand alone. Thus, we need a comma when putting them together with the coordinating conjunction and. The same thing happens with the following sentence. Sam rang the doorbell, comma, but Alice didn't hear it. Again, both sentences could stand alone. Thus, we use the comma. However, the following sentence is a bit different. Susan took her bag and headed back to the station. We don't use a comma here because both actions are performed by Susan and headed back to the station could not stand alone. The second grammar rule is WABBITS. These are subordinating conjunctions, such as when, where, while, after, although, before, because, if, though, since. There are more of them. Use a comma if the WABBIT begins the clause, but do not use a comma if the WABBIT is in the middle of the clause. Let's take a look at some examples. If it rains tomorrow, comma, I'll stay at home. When they saw me, comma, they stopped to have a chat. In both sentences, the WABBIT begins the sentence, which is why comma is used. In the following sentence, the main clause comes first. Let me just go through some notes before joining you in the hall. As you can see, we don't use comma when the main clause comes first, because the WABBIT in itself shows that it starts another clause, so there really is no need for a comma. Next, we have rule number 3, a series. Put a comma after words, phrases, and clauses in the series. Let's see 3 examples of these. She bought fruit, comma, vegetables, comma, bread, comma, and some ice cream. The next sentence is an example of phrases in a series. The horse galloped down the road, comma, through the fields, comma, and ran into the forest to escape the noise. The third sentence is an example of clauses in a series. When you have done your homework, comma, when you have made your bed, comma, and when you have cleaned the room, comma, you can go outside. As you can see, in all of these series, there's a comma also before the last item in the list. This is called the Oxford comma. The Oxford comma is a comma used before the last item in a list. It is optional, so you can choose whether to use it or not. Whichever way you decide to write, just remember to be consistent. Please note that sometimes, however, you need to use it to be more clear. Compare these 2 examples. I had a strange dream about my parents, comma, Moses and Agatha Christie. This sentence, without the Oxford comma, implies that the narrator's parents were Moses and Agatha Christie. Whereas with the Oxford comma, it becomes clear that the dream was about the parents and Moses and Agatha Christie. Rule number 4 deals with coordinate adjectives. The rule is quite simple. Put a comma between coordinate adjectives. But what are they? Adjectives are coordinate if they sound natural when they are either reversed or joined by the coordinating conjunction and. Let me show you some examples. I woke up to the sound of cheerful, comma, perky birds singing. We use a comma here. To check whether the comma is needed, you can change the order of these adjectives or join them by and. Let's see another example. We walk down the long, narrow path. The same thing happens here. You can reverse the adjectives or join them by using the coordinating conjunction and. However, do not use the comma if adjectives sound unnatural when their places are switched or when they can't be separated by and. For example, let's stop at the new Italian restaurant. As you can see, there is no comma here. If you think about it, it wouldn't sound natural to say Italian new restaurant or new and Italian restaurant. It just doesn't sound natural, which is why we write new Italian restaurant with no comma. Rule number 5. Introductory clauses and shortened sentences. Separate these with a comma. For example, after the beginning of the term, comma, I quickly adapted to the new routines. This is an example of an introductory clause. Henry left the building, comma, smiling to himself. This is an example of a shortened sentence. You could also write Henry left the building and smiled to himself. This would be without the comma. But to use versatile structures in your text, you might want to use a shortened sentence. In that case, please remember to use the comma. Let's see another example. We talked for a long time, comma, totally losing the track of time. Again, you could write, we talked for a long time and totally lost the track of time, and use no comma in that sentence. However, if you write a shortened sentence, then you should use the comma. Rule number 6. Extra information. Use commas around additional words, phrases, and clauses that give more detailed information. Basically, if these words, phrases, or clauses are dropped, the sentence will still make sense and retain its basic meaning. Samuel, their youngest child, is very artistic. Their youngest child, Samuel, is very artistic. Both these sentences would make sense even without the extra information between the commas. The same thing goes with Madrid, the capital of Spain, is a beautiful city. The phrase, the capital of Spain, is extra information and could be left out. Thus, we use commas. Extra information can also be a relative clause, as in this sentence. Matt, who drives the bus, is her cousin. Let's see a few more examples of extra information in relative clauses. There's something you need to consider when using or not using a comma there. All the kids, who were under 10, got a free entrance. In this sentence, all the kids were under 10 years old and they all got a free entrance. This is implied by the relative clause between the commas. It's called a non-restrictive relative clause and it gives additional information of the preceding word. Compare this sentence to this one. All the kids who were under 10 got a free entrance. The sentence is exactly the same, with the only difference being the use of commas. In this sentence, there were kids of all ages. Some were maybe 5, some were maybe 11 or 12, but only the ones under 10 got a free entrance. This is a so-called restrictive relative clause, and it gives necessary, not extra information, which is why it can't be left out, and thus we don't use commas with it. Let's move on to rule number 7. Quotations. Use a comma to introduce a quotation after a brief introductory phrase or a dependent clause. The commas that belong to the sentence go inside the quotation marks. Let's see what this means. The police officer said, comma, I'm sure who did this. Here the comma is used to introduce a quotation. The best thing to do, comma, she said, comma, is to leave as early as possible. Here, the first comma is included in the quotation, and the second comma is used to introduce the quotation. Rule number 8 is about dates. Use a comma when you write the date in month, day, year format. For example, Albert Einstein was born in March the 14th, 1879. Here you separate the year from the month and day, whereas no comma is needed when you write only the month and the year, as in this sentence. We were asked to have everything done by June 2026. These are the 8 basic rules. Now, if you want to practice the use of commas and test your skills, you can take this free Kahoot quiz. I've created it and it'll be open for quite a while. You can go to kahoot.it and use the game pin on the screen. No signing in is required, it's completely free. I'll also add a direct link in the description of this video. This is all for now. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.